Testing. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Ready? The board is already back in open session, and so we'll move to the agenda 401 presentation from the STEM Academy.
Good evening. I'm Tyler Potter, the Director of Technology for the School District of Lodi, and I would like to introduce the STEM Academy to the board, as well as the students that we have attending currently. Just as a brief overview, the STEM Academy is a cooperation between Lodi High School, 3 other high schools, and Madison College. The STEM Academy is a 2-year program designed for high school juniors and seniors interested in a field in science, technology, engineering, or math, and therefore the STEM part of the field, or the academy. Graduates may obtain both a high school diploma and at least 60 college credits during their time in the academy. Students may pursue several different pathways while they are there. One option is for an Associate's of Science degree, and if they choose that pathway, they can enter any UW system school as a junior. Another pathway could be towards a technical certification. Madison College offers over 100 different technical certifications, and a student that goes through the STEM Academy generally will need only 1 more year after high school to achieve that certification. The School District of Lodi supports up to 2 students each year to join the academy, so we could carry 4 students total. We currently have 3 students in the STEM Academy, junior Emma Glazer, senior Hannah Rolke, and senior Mira Potter. Before I give the students a chance to talk, do you have any questions about the academy in general? Fantastic.
Hello, I'm Emma Glazer. I'm a junior and I'm in the STEM Academy. Right now I'm pursuing the path of the Associates in Science. And I was told we should just talk about what we think of the STEM Academy. And well, in short, I think it's a fantastic program so far. You get access to advanced classes and things that you just wouldn't have in a high school setting like this. Like right now, I'm taking Calculus 2, I'm taking Computer Science 2, we're coding with Java, and there's just a lot of really great advanced classes there they're more specialized and you wouldn't have them in a high school like this. Additionally, the STEM Academy has a lot of resources for us students that you can take advantage of. They have free tutoring, free help with writing. All of the different teachers there are very helpful and they really care about their students. They grant each of the STEM students an advisor, like their own special advisor that helps with class enrollment, any general questions that they have while they're there, any extra events and things of that nature, groups. They also have clubs. You get emails with things like tutoring opportunities and information about scholarships. There's just a big multitude of resources there available that you get for such a good package in the STEM Academy. I think, and it's been a great experience. Not to mention all the people that I've met there as well. You really tend to meet a lot of like-minded people when you go there, since they're all in the same program. And they're people you might not meet otherwise in a small town like Lodi. They're coming from all sorts of high schools and all sorts of places. And I've made some of my closest friends in the STEM Academy so far. So yeah, I think it's quite an amazing program, and I really like it. Any questions?
How
Yeah.
much, yeah, go ahead.
Go
No.
ahead.
I was going to say, how much time did you spend? So you're a junior, so this is your first year. How much time, COVID-wise, did you spend at MATC this year?
COVID-wise?
Yeah, so since September.
Well, most of the classes have been hybrid,
Okay.
but with a big emphasis on in-person classes. So we haven't had any full online really yet, no lockdowns there.
Good.
They're very strict with the mask program, so it's been relatively safe there. And so almost all of my classes have been in person, just for a couple exceptions that have been full online.
Thanks.
As a junior in high school here, what has been the biggest, what has stretched you the most to leave here basically as a sophomore and go to classes at Madison College?
What I'd say with that is how the class time is organized differently. So in high school, you will really do a lot of your work in class, but in college, it's like you get an hour lecture and then you get however much homework assigned afterwards. You need to kind of chunk off your other time that's not just in class time, because your hour lecture, you won't be doing all your work in class anymore. That's been my biggest stretch going from high school to college.
Thank you.
And you've been doing it? You've been handling it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hannah Ruckley. So my time at MATC has been mostly online for my junior year since COVID. So I've had a lot of experience with online classes, which actually worked out very well for me. I sort of liked the online feeling since we did a lot of traveling, my family, during later in the year. So, but in person this year, or this semester, is my first in-person classes. So I really like the flexibility of the classes. Like Emma said, you get to choose kind of what time slot you want to have your classes, and then there's homework after. And my schedule, it works well for me, and I got to choose what time I wanted it, since last year I had a 10 a.m. class, and that was my first class, but now this semester I have an 8:30 a.m. calculus class. So there's also a lot of free time for teachers' office hours or the tutoring center, which I have used, and those resources are really helpful. So I did a honors project, and I used the writing center for that, and they were really helpful with helping me write my paper and just fix little mistakes. So the many resources that they have there are really helpful. Plus the advisor, he helps me with any questions or even applying to colleges. He helps me with that, and he wrote a letter of recommendation as well. So in the summer, I did an honors project. So that's, it's like I got 3 credits out of that. It's like a class that I took in the summer, and for that I did a whole research paper. So I did a 15-page research paper on fitness trackers in healthcare. So I did the research part of it, and my advisor for that, he helped me. He was related in that topic, so he was an English major, so he helped me write it. And he was a great reference for colleges for that as well, so I thought that was a really cool thing, the honors project there. And my future career, I've taken multiple computer science classes here, and just there's a lot more options that I can explore within computer science. So right now I'm taking a Java class, and I'm on track to graduate with an associate's degree. So I feel like that's really cool, and I plan on transferring to a 4-year college in the future with that.
Do you have any idea which 4-year colleges you're interested in? Is there any on the list?
Yeah, I have 3 backups, and then UW-Madison is my top choice right now. And then I was thinking of, if that didn't work out, I might continue at MATC with just classes.
You will have no trouble getting into UW-Madison. Zero trouble.
Yeah.
You guys have any other
You may have answered this, I mean, you basically did, but are you finding MATC to be a pretty welcoming place for young students like yourselves?
Yeah, I feel like they're really welcoming. Just the experience there, and the teachers and the other students, they're really welcoming and welcome to help you out and everything.
We're really glad to hear that, because as we were deciding, about this program when it was first proposed, we had a lot of, discussion about high school students and missing some high school things, and being put in a different environment. But it does sound like from you and from the other students who have been in it that our concerns have been you're having a good experience there. So.
And then I have one more question. You mentioned that you had homework time, right? And that you had to take that into consideration. How much of that homework are you allowed, or how much of that homework do you do at MATC versus at home, now that you're in person?
I stay after my classes, so I do a lot of my homework after class, but in class you don't have time to do
No,
homework.
that's what I mean. But you're doing it at MATC.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they have a whole bunch of places to study. They have study rooms and all of that, so you can get a quiet space to just work on homework, and that's really helpful too. So if I would take it home, I'd probably get distracted with something else. So just for them to have that space is cool.
Okay, thank you.
All right, hi, I'm Mira Potter. For me, the STEM Academy has provided me with a lot of opportunities and benefits that I wouldn't have had otherwise, even with the majority of my time there being online, with all of my junior year being online. And then last semester I had 1 in-person class, but then the rest of my classes were online. And then even this semester I still have 1 online class, but most of my classes are now in person. First of all, as I think Emma and Hannah both mentioned, you can take a lot more advanced classes. For example, last semester I took Calculus 3, which is, as a normal high school student, would not have had that opportunity. Also, this semester I'm taking statics, which is math-based physics for engineers, which is really fun because I want to go into engineering, so that's very cool. You also get a lot more freedom and independence with both your class choices and your time. Again, there's a lot more different classes you can take, which just aren't offered at high schools. For example, also this semester I'm taking a Native American literature class, which is very cool, very interesting. And then with time, the whole working out with your homework, figuring out when you're going to do it, whether you're going to do it at home or at the college, either way, and just having a lot more freedom with what you do with all of that. Obviously, the college credits and being able to get an associate's degree, very cool. I'm personally on track to get my associate's degree at the end of this year when I graduate, hoping we don't fail any of my classes this semester at least.
You're not going to fail any classes.
I didn't think I was going to, but another thing that's really cool, you get to meet a lot of other people who are passionate about the same things that you are. A lot of people who are very interested in STEM areas through the STEM Academy, which is really fun, and you can really connect with people who are a lot like yourself. Let's see. And another really cool thing about MATC is they have a lot of areas where students can kind of just hang out and get to know each other, like their cafeteria, fantastic, lots of really good food. And then there's like the den, which has like a pool table and a ping pong table that I'll go and hang out with some of my friends sometimes just to chill after classes. Another really cool opportunity that I got at the STEM Academy is the Honors Project, which Hannah also mentioned this, but it's basically you do a semester-long independent project, and you get to pick your own topic, you get to pick what you're doing, and you get 3 credits for it, 2 or 3 credits, depending on how much time you put into it. And they give you an advisor to help you out, but the advisor is really more there just to guide you. It's very independent, and it's really whatever you want to research or build or create, you can do that. Like, there are people who do different engineering projects, or there's people who do art projects. Really anything you want to do, you can in the Honors Project. I personally wrote a research paper on renewable energy sources and like their different benefits. And that actually helped me decide that I want to go into renewable energy in my future, which is very cool and fun. I also took an intro to renewable energy class last semester, which helped me decide that as well. But between that class and my honors project, I really figured out and decided that I wanted to go into renewable energy because that was something I was working on for a while and wasn't sure about. Another really cool opportunity that I got is I'm currently a worker in the STEM Center at Madison College. So the STEM Center, it's kind of like our discovery centers, you know, like upstairs and in all of the buildings. It's just an area where students can come and they have a bunch of 3D printers, just pretty much anything engineering-wise or science, technology, anything like that. They have a workshop, they have a little meeting room. It's really cool, and I go there every morning, and I'm actually the opener, so I get to open, and I get to like write on the whiteboards and like make sure everything's nice and clean. It's very fun. But a lot of the time there, I just get to study, and it's very nice. But it's a really great opportunity because, I don't know, just everyone there is just so interested in STEM, and there will always be people working on calculus, and you go and check in on them and like see what they're working on. It's really fun. Or there's always stuff like working on the 3D printers, and you can go and see and just kind of, there's always someone working on something really cool there, so that's really fun. Let's see. Yeah, the STEM Center, very cool. I think you would ask Hannah or Emma about like studying places. The STEM Center is where I do most of my studying, whether I'm working or just after classes. For example, like after my statics class, which I have in the mornings on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, a bunch of the kids in that class, we all kind of like work together, so we'll all go to the STEM Center, and we'll sit at a table and work on our statics work, you know, working out our engineering problems, and that's very fun. And yeah, that's, yeah. And it's really nice to just be able to work with all those people and have that space.
Can you take a minute and tell us what you did this summer?
This summer.
For summer school?
For summer school,
Yeah.
like with the here?
And how that sort of related back to MATC?
Yeah, sure. So this summer I taught STEM summer school classes to elementary schoolers. I had 3 classes, so you know there's like the 3 sessions, there's the 2 sessions and then there's 3 classes each day. I did a DIY STEAM class, I did a Structures and Machines class, and a Girls in STEAM class. Girls in STEAM, very cool. But I guess the main one that connects back to my experience at Madison College would be the Girls in STEAM, because Madison College, as you can see, is very, they choose, they put women in STEM above, they prioritize women in STEM, which I think is really amazing, as we are very underrepresented, but again, as you can see here, very overrepresented. So that's very fun. And I very much agree with encouraging younger girls and women to go into STEM fields. So.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
So Mira, one of the questions that when we first put this together was whether students could still participate in their high school co-curriculars. Can you speak to that? Because I know you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. Yeah, right there on the poster.
There's Mira in mock trial.
Yeah, so obviously last year not too much with everything COVID-wise, but this year I did tennis. I was actually captain of our tennis team this year, so that was very fun. I was our one of our 2 doubles on varsity. And it was really easy because I just had to make sure that all of my classes were done by like 3 o'clock, and then I could be back here by 3:30. And with having such flexibility and the different class times, it was really easy to just say to my advisor, Andrew, like, hey, just no classes past 3 o'clock, please. And he was like, all right, sounds good, and then sign me up for all the other ones. And I was able to get back here by 3:30 every day. I don't remember if I had any issues with like having competitions interfere with any of my classes. Oh, I definitely did at least once, and I just like emailed my teacher, and she was like super understanding. So that was very nice. I just explained to her like, hey, I'm actually in high school, and I'm in tennis, so that was pretty fun. And then obviously, as Mr. Steinberg showed you, I'm also in mock trial. Again, same deal, just no classes past like 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then I can get back here by 3:30 and go to mock trial. No real issues there, and it's really nice to be able to still see everyone here at the high school and see all of my friends in mock trial, and it's very cool because I'll have like my Madison College friend group that I hang out with, and then I'll have my like Lodi friend group that I'll hang out with. So very, very, very fun. But yeah, no issues with co-curriculars like at all, really, as long as you just make sure to tell your advisor like, hey, I want to do this co-curricular. Please don't sign me up for classes that are at that same time.
Very nice.
Great. Anything else?
I think we're good. Thank you.
So great to hear
thank
from
you.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Amazing. Next, we have the Taking Positive Steps of Service Award.
Hi, Stephanie. Come on down. So Stephanie Sefrud has been nominated for the Taking Positive Steps for Service Award. I'm just going to read the nomination. Stephanie is an incredible educator and an even better person. She is so much fun to work with, and the kids actually enjoy going to reading class when they have her as a teacher. What Stephanie has done for decades in Lodi cannot be understated. She has helped thousands of kids begin as readers and open up a lifetime of opportunities for them and their futures. After retiring last year and being ready for the good life, Stephanie was called back to the school district of Lodi when they couldn't find anyone to replace her position. She never thought twice about coming back to serve her students and changed her future plans to return to the classroom. Recently, Stephanie dropped off dozens and dozens of reading books to my classroom. I had a conversation with Stephanie earlier this year about how I didn't have enough low-level reader books for my students, and Stephanie didn't think that was okay. Therefore, she went out and ran a scholastic book fair in order to purchase more reading materials for my classroom. This extra effort will be felt by myself and my students for years to come. She's just an incredible woman, and we truly hope we can find that she can find retirement at the end of this year. So, you get this certificate and a pay raise of 100 grand, right? Right there. So I take a picture with Mr. Jones.
Well, I just wanted to say that when I agreed to come back, I wasn't expecting an award, so but I'm just really humbled by this, and I just love the school district, and the people I work with are incredible, and it was just, for me, in my own heart, it was just too important of a job not to have someone in. And so I'm happy to be back. You know, it's just really wonderful. And it's really the best week to be at the elementary school because it's Valentine's Day and it's book fair week. So we're all excited over there. So I just want to thank you. And thank you for being good to me over the years too. I really appreciate everything, the support I've gotten from you as well. So it's a great district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll have public input. Purpose of public input agenda item is for the citizens and staff of the School District of Lodi to provide comments on any agenda item or to publicly address the Board of Education on items that pertain to school business. Portion of the meeting during which the comment of the public is invited shall be limited to 10 people unless extended by a vote of the board prior to the beginning of the public input portion of the meeting. The amount of time allotted to each speaker will generally not exceed 3 minutes. If the speaker has questions for the board, they'll be duly noted, and responses will be provided in an appropriate manner. But the board cannot respond to individual questions or individual comments as part of the public input agenda item. As an additional reminder, the board cannot take action on any item that is brought forth during the public input session or on any item that was not posted on the meeting agenda. If you are providing comments, we would merely ask that you please come to the microphone and state your name and municipality of residence. So I'll now call the people on the list who have signed up for citizen input, one at a time to the microphone. First is Suzanne Miller.
Okay, thank you, board. I realize now that every time I want to get up to the microphone, suddenly something changes, and now we're down to 3 minutes. So that being said, buckle your seatbelts, because I'll try to get it in. 10 years of experience in 2 minutes and 46 seconds. As far as someone will get back to you if you have questions for the board. Mr. Steinberg, I called you more than 2 weeks ago. Whenever I want to follow up on where's the money, that's when I no longer get my calls returned. That has happened here. That has happened elsewhere. Anyone who wants to say that these issues are not relevant, you must know that my questions are related to the people who have been serving for many years and are on the ballot again, most likely. My first concern is the fiduciary responsibility I spoke of last time. Show me your budget. I'll show you your priorities. And with the new referendum coming forward, that we should give you more money is very much on my mind. So my hardest question, I guess, is did this board violate the state code of ethics for legal government officials, section 19.59 of the Wisconsin statutes, when they privately sold the outlots at 103 Pleasant Street to then board member Ricks? Was the private sale of the entire property a financially prudent decision, particularly for the city of Lodi residents and the people in that neighborhood? An $800,000 loss in real estate value. That's where I saw your fiduciary responsibility to the city residents, in the negative. How did this board not know that the people wanted that land for $1,000? Then there is the $450,000 that Commissioner Detmer told us was up for grabs. You hear nothing about that, just like with the Dream Park. I also checked on who's responsible for noting restrictive covenants. That will be another discussion. Moving on to another question of financial responsibility. What was the value of the lumber from the bleachers at the elementary school that Chuck Purcell gave to Alder Ton, and was it used for his new home and the spec house he built next door? Does this cause a conflict of Section C of the statutes, which prohibits conduct, use of office for private gain?
Thank you. Next is Lane Rulin.
Hello, Lane Rulin, Town of Lodi. I'm calling on you to end the mask mandate for our children. And since only one of you can be bothered to answer me, please tell us at some point here tonight what criteria must be met in your mind before we can move to a mask optional policy? It has become quite apparent that this mask policy is not about safety at all. Take the hand-picked medical advisory committee's decision to allow non-masking during competitive athletic sports. First, why in the world have you delegated your authority to an unelected, unaccountable board? You are the elected officials. You take the vote to set the policy, not this committee. Second, it is appalling to me that still my kindergartner is forced to wear a mask day in and day out when they will never have the same close contact with other students as basketball players or wrestlers during a match. If we can make this broad of an exception for certain students when perhaps it is more popular or our concerns rest with how we may be perceived, how can you legitimately continue to require mandatory masking for our young children? Why are you continuing to do this, not only to our children, but to our teachers? They have enough to deal with, and no matter how incredible they are, as my child's teacher undoubtedly is, can you imagine trying to teach a kindergartner how to read through a mask? Even though studies have shown a real negative impact on child's social emotional learning and well-being due to masks, apparently that doesn't matter, but athletics matters enough to make an exception that has nothing to do with health. And now this expert committee has decided that the benefit of mask-free athletic competition outweighs the risk of COVID transmission, which it absolutely objectively does. But my small child's education, mental and physical health are all things that you're willing to risk by continuing to require masks. Every morning that we wake up, there is a risk that something bad might happen. Eating breakfast, driving a car, exposure to all sorts of other transmissible diseases at school. But we understand that the benefits associated with those risks often outweigh the other risks, and make policy accordingly. That has obviously been thrown out the window with COVID policies. Since when did a risk tolerance of 0 become an assumption in policy making? Now it seems even that 0 risk logic is out the door, and there is no logic remaining with our mask policy. The highest chance of spreading COVID is during competitive play, which is exactly when our high school students are not required to wear masks. And it just makes clear that there is no longer a real justified need for mandatory masking. I am certain we are going to look back on this time in our history with disdain for how we have failed our children. Masking has become theater and has nothing to do with public health. How can we take any of this seriously when those who make the rules, from the highest levels of our government all the way to here, you all can't be bothered to wear a mask anywhere but here? Make mask optional. Listen to the people that elected you who overwhelmingly said, we want masks to be optional. Thank you.
Next, you have Monica Simpson.
Hi, I'm Monica Simpson, Town of Lodi. In this building today, you're going to see large rebooted pride flags and displays around school to celebrate various gender identities. But I haven't seen a Disability Awareness Month display yet this year. I haven't seen a religious diversity awareness display or even the nativity scene at Christmas. If the school is doing this to show inclusivity, why aren't these other groups getting recognition? You are recognizing categories of identity that are held dear by a certain political ideology. You are favoring that political ideology when you do that. Can you maybe understand why people spoke up against the Equity Initiative's presentation in May? Professional development monies were part of these initiatives. We're also told that professional development money is threatened if the referendum does not pass. Can you also understand why people would be okay with such money being cut? The school has paid a lot for SEL seminars, $30K for a consultant for the strategic plan. You spent large amounts on a consultant who owns a PR firm for school districts. These amounts are similar to cuts our teachers' supply budgets would see. Our administrators are hired because they are competent and, I admit, excellent. We have talent right here for those initiatives. They have business and educational skills to steer this, and yet money was spent that could have been given to our teachers. From a school that has many, many administrators, wouldn't one of them be qualified to develop strategic planning initiatives? Again, if we're not tapping our own talent and paying others, we can cut funding to some areas. Now, on the referendum, thank you for offering listening sessions. I do look forward to attending and getting more of my questions answered. But perhaps you can also add listening sessions for the public every month if you're going to cut down speaker time. You know, you pushed that through time limits last month, but really, you need to be listening to us if you want us to vote, if you want us to have input. When our kids were first forced to go virtual, we were made direct stakeholders of their education. We saw what was going on, and we have great teachers here, but now we are totally integrated stakeholders, okay? So if you're gonna cut our input somewhere, you need to give it to us elsewhere. Spend within your means, use COVID funding that you are receiving, and I don't know, I feel like this is the time that you could make do like every other family and business is that has seen their lifestyle cut through COVID. Finally, when I hear a board member still blaming Act 10 for lack of funding, or when I hear a board member blaming discontent of parents on pandemic stress or Donald Trump's loss, I know they don't talk to enough stakeholders to represent them anymore. They talk to those who agree with them. That is not representing everybody, and I see why they wanted public input cut off. Thank you.
Next, we have Heather Schilling.
Heather Schilling, Town of Lodi. As many of you know, public input was recently modified to change the total talking time from 5 minutes to 3 and limit speakers to 10 total unless there is a majority vote made by the board to overrule. The timing of this seems strategic. This is the last meeting before the primaries, and there is no doubt in my mind that is why the policy was put into place now, since it was originally suggested to be in July. The school hired student perceptions to analyze data for the referendum. The organization is known for staging questions in a way that misrepresents the facts as well as the results. After the district received several complaints from people wanting to see the actual results of the survey, a 56-page document came out, and I saw that the student perceptions version of the survey was rainbows and butterflies compared to the actual results. Things that stuck out to me. Some words appeared 10 to 20 times in the comments, but never showed up once in the presentation. These words include trust, fiscal responsibility or lack thereof, and transparency. Several examples were given of each. CRT was mentioned 50 times. How many times was it in the presentation? 0 from what I can recall. On the subject of planning and financial background, there were 7 pages of comments alone, and most were not good. The school scored poorly in fiscal responsibility, and comments show why. I picked out some of the comments that stood out to me as a theme, an overall theme that we were looking at, and I'll just read a few of these. The school board wants money from the families they don't listen to. That's funny. I really need to consider if I can support additional funding. If I did, it would be in spite of the board and not because of it. Please provide the operational budget before a yes-no decision can be made. If the pandemic of 2020 and 2020 blended education model has shown us anything, it is the abundance of expenditures and wastefulness of the budget. Reduce the number of administrators in the district. Teachers do not meet salaries other districts are paying, but admin is at or above levels. And I'll skip some of the other comments in light of time. The bottom line is that parents are fed up. Many more would support a referendum if they knew they could trust the board and if they saw transparency. I read far too many emails from the board that were unprofessional and concerning. One telling a parent they could never get a hold of them again on their school account. I emailed the board asking for clarification on who has the final say when the medical advisory committee makes a recommendation. While one of the answers I received was diplomatic, another email removed Vince and the other parties and replied to just me saying the information you seek is in the name medical advisory committee. What a crock. I asked Vince what to do with this, and he suggested that I follow up and request a face-to-face or meeting. I did this, and surprise, surprise, I never heard back. This is not an isolated event. I filed a complaint against a different board member, and the response I got was a 3-page essay on how this person was qualified to be a board member, while only giving my complaint a couple sentences, none of which were an apology. Before filing this complaint, I attempted to sit down and was also turned down on this occasion. Under the current board administration, you will find rules in place that read more like those of an insecure tin pot dictator who simply punishes the silence and silences dissenters. This is a board that is run by the district administrator and not the other way around. It is time to demand change and stop following rules that do not have your kids' best interests at mind. Thank you.
Next is Scott Brique.
Scott Brique, Town of Lodi. The board made the decision to delegate 100% of their authority to an unelected medical advisory committee without proper oversight. Non-medical decisions are being made by an unaccountable committee as opposed to the board, where the authority and judgment belongs. When the winter sports season started, the board followed the advice without question. All kids must wear a mask while actively participating in sports, no exceptions. I went to the first basketball game and watched the kids playing their hearts out. After 5 minutes, pretty much all the kids were not wearing masks correctly. It was embarrassing to have a mask mandate and have kids' pictures in the newspaper not wearing a mask. As a result, the medical committee reconvened, changed a policy to while you were competing, you don't need to wear a mask, even though they admitted sports were a highly transferable activity for COVID. Those are their words, not mine. Question was asked, why allow kids to go maskless during games but not practice? Administration said airflow involved in playing sports decreases spread of COVID. I decided to watch the next medical advisory committee meeting myself to hear things firsthand. Perhaps I was mistaken, but I did not see a single board member in attendance. The question was asked, why a mask mandate at practice but not a game? The consensus was that wearing a mask during a game would put the Lodi players at a competitive disadvantage. Further, wearing masks would be a distraction to the spectators. Finally, they said that eating was a highly transferable activity and the district should be very careful about distancing. The board claimed they lacked the ability to use reasonable judgment or be pragmatic. What did these experts recommend at their meeting? Based on the committee's logic, it is fine to put kids in harm's way so that adults can be entertained while packed into stands eating popcorn and pretzels, maskless while watching. We all know this is a charade. Anyone that watched the Super Bowl yesterday knows this is a charade. I went to the first coffee with the superintendent function about a week ago. Not more than 2 feet from me was the president of this board, maskless, for the entire hour. Obviously, he knows it's a charade. How can this board condone shameless at schools that punish kids for not wearing a mask when board members don't practice what they preach? Unfortunately, your decision to curtail public input forbids me from giving significant other examples of the fallacy of the current policy. Other schools have mask optional the entire year, and their experiences have not been much different than ours. The committee doesn't even look at those stats. Listen to what the data is telling you. It is clear. Masking was simply not a panacea. Don't dig your heels in, especially with numbers drastically falling, as expected. Don't let your obsession with following Dane County be used as an excuse to punish these kids any longer. They deserve to be treated with respect, not as pawns. Thank you.
Thank you. And Shelley Pear.
Valentine's Day. You all took turns out of your life to come here and listen to people. I was up on the board for 6 years. I loved all of it. It was awesome, except the last year when we had to do the thing where I got bumped out of every meeting. Remember, Vince? I got bumped out of every meeting. So, and Vince would just call me and say, Shelley, just keep your phone on. We know this is not going to work. So I'm here tonight for a couple reasons. I'm really sick of rules. When I was a kid, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. I had to be home at this time, I had to do this. Everything was rule, 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 rule. Then as you grow up, you have a whole bunch of other rules that you like or you don't like, but they're always there. There are rules for a reason. Some of the rules I don't agree with, others I do agree with. But I think that it needs to have a good reason to have a rule. Concerning the performing and people, basketball and other things that we've got going on, I think if people are vaccinated, that would be okay. And that's just coming from me, doesn't come from anybody else. I just feel if people are vaccinated, they show the vaccination card, we're good, we're in. On the other hand, we've always had rules. No shirt, no service. If you were a smoker, you have to be in the smoking area, right? So there's always going to be rules, and then we have to decide on what are the best rules that we can do, that we can live with. If you've never been up there, you can't critique. You just can't. I can't critique somebody who's doing something fabulous in art class because I can't even read my own handwriting. So I can't critique an artist. But don't critique people who are up in front. They all have jobs to do. They're not just the board members. So when you talk to people, talk nicely about things. You can have a disagreement. Disagreements are great. You can learn things. You can talk it out. And I think it's really great to have disagreements in a genuine, caring manner. So when I see a lot of people with comments and putting other people down, doesn't help our community. So if I say, you know what, Vince, I need to talk to you because I'm really unhappy about this or that or the other thing, I'm going to talk to him. I'm not going to go out to other people. So when you're looking around and you're seeing what people want to do, again, think about if you were in the opposite shoe, okay? And that's kind of all I'm asking. So have a great Valentine's Day. Thank you, and thank you to everybody up there.
Thanks, Shelley.
Thank you, Shelley.
Pass it around the audience. Next, we have the consent agenda items on this. So consent agenda items in this section will be adopted as a group unless a board member requests a specific item to be removed from consent agenda and addressed separately. We have the approval of the minutes from January 10th. We have the vouchers. We have the fundraiser request for softball, baseball, youth clinic. We have a fundraiser report for Little Caesars sale for girls soccer. There are no field trip requests. Under committee recommendation for approval, we have contract review committee recommendation for the Washington, D.C. trip coordinator and a finance and facility committee recommendation for a food service employee wage increase. Under others, we have boys hockey co-op renewal, primary school discipline report, elementary OSC discipline report, middle school discipline report, and the high school discipline report. Resignation and retirement. Under retirement, we have a middle school custodian, primary elementary OSC art teacher, food service administrative assistant, and under resignation, we have middle school special education assistant, primary school special education assistant, and mail delivery / van driver. Under co-curricular, we have new JV softball coach, which will be tabled. We have a new, sorry, they're not new because they're going to be tabled. A JV baseball coach, which is tabled, a JV girls soccer coach, which is tabled, and a middle school assistant track coach tabled. We do have a new middle school head track coach and volunteer girls soccer coach. Under community program and crew, we have a new crew volunteer and then a lifeguard instructor. Under regular staff, we have a permanent middle school, high school substitute, long-term PE substitute, and a primary school permanent substitute. Under personal other, we have leave without pay and a professional improvement reimbursement, 2 of them.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with approval of Justin Whitworth as long-term elementary school OSC physical education teacher and Destiny Mortar as primary school permanent substitute.
I second that.
Motion by Angie and a second by Terry. Is there any further discussion on the consent agenda items? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. First up, we have the referendum presentation information.
Yeah, so I would ask the board to go sit in the audience, and I will give the presentation that I've been giving out to the community. I know most of you have seen it, and probably most of the people sitting in the audience have seen it, but people are watching from home, so it'd be an opportunity for us to go through that presentation. So, whoops. So thank you. I just wanted to go over the referendum presentation. I've been giving this to different municipality groups and different community groups. This is the same presentation I'll give during information sessions and have the opportunity just to provide information to our community on the referendum. This presentation is also obviously in board docs, but it is also on our referendum website with a frequently asked questions document that goes through a lot of the questions that we've been asked to try to make sure that we have an informed electorate when it comes to the referendum. But to start out, there's a quiz, right? So how much is the current annual referendum? And I know for time's sake, I'm going to kind of whiz through some of this. But our current annual referendum is $1.7 million. That was approved 5 years ago and goes away at the end of this school year. How much is the proposed annual referendum amount? D, $5.98 million, and we'll go into all the specifics about that. How many municipalities are in the school district of Lodi? And that's one of the things that people have to think about when we start talking about tax impact. It's always difficult to give a really good answer to that because all the municipalities interplay with each other, and the state plays a role in that as well. But we have 9 municipalities within the school district of Lodi, and most people don't get that question right. What is the school district's total equalized value? This is the amount of property that we have behind each of our students. It's $1.45 billion, almost $1.5 billion with a B. So when you're looking at school funding formula, you look at students and you look at the amount of property behind them. If the proposed referendum is approved, what does the school district projected mill rate look like? It increases from 11.11 to 12.11. It decreases, or it just goes away. We all wished it was C, but it's not. It's B. It will actually decrease the mill rate from 11.11 to 11. And we project that annual taxes will go down if the referendum passes. And then a couple things about the school district. Out of 35 high schools in CESA 5, Lodi High School's ACT score ranks number 1. Lodi received a significantly exceeds expectations ranking on 2021 school report card, which ranks us, what, out of 550 Wisconsin public schools serving high school age students. 16th. Again, a snapshot in time for both of those. But again, just talking about some of the outcomes, and you saw that on display today when we had 3 of our students out here presenting today. We have great outcomes for our students from our high school and from our district. And obviously when we have great outcomes from our high school, it's because we're doing great things in our other levels as well. So referendum, the vote date is April 5th, 2022. It's a non-recurring referendum for 5 years, which means after 5 years it goes away. That's currently what we have now is a non-recurring referendum. You could have a recurring referendum. When you vote for a recurring referendum, it continues going forward. It doesn't go away. This is a non-recurring. And referendum is part of our story here in Lodi. Since 2009, we've had non-recurring referendum. 850,000, 875,000, 1.7, 3.85. And again, 5 years from now, we will be back with another non-recurring referendum unless there's a significant change to the state's funding formula or a significant influx of students and balancing that out. So why do we need to go to referendum, right? So state aid reductions and stringent revenue limits imposed by the state has severely limited the district's ability to fund educational programs and daily operations. So in 2016, that's what drove us to go to referendum. Those things have not changed. We continue to be in that area, so we are continuing to have to look at a referendum. So as you look, our budget, our expenses continue to increase. Our revenue will decrease by 1.7 million next year, and it will continue. That gap will continue to grow. That is why we're asking for the referendum, the operational portion of that referendum, and we're also asking for some maintenance pieces, so I'll get into that a little bit more depth. And we, again, are not the only school district in the state of Wisconsin that has to go to referendum. It is a very common thing. And if you look at different types of referendum, debt issue is the kind of referendum that we did 5 years ago to pay for our primary school. It is when we take out debt to build a building. Recurring referendum, as I said before, you pass it and it just reoccurs from that point forward. Non-recurring referendum is what we've been working with, is where you set a certain amount of time and then it disappears. So our current $1.7 million disappears at the end of this year. So how do you decide what is in a referendum, right? So we looked at our strategic plan, which was built by our community. We brought our community together last year, and we mapped out a community, put together a vision element study team, which then remapped out the community, and they ran the strategic planning process. They were the table captains. We had the administration and the board members sit to the side and had our community members run the tables and gather input. And they are the ones who worked together to put together the strategic plan, which the board then adopted. And we used the strategic plan to drive what's in our referendum. And the pillars that came out from our community, which is awesome, so we have the community told us what the priorities are, is to prepare our students for our future. So academic and career excellence, nurturing the whole student, creating that sense of belonging by growing empathy and compassion, innovative communication, district workforce, attracting and retaining exceptional team members, operational excellence, planning for the district, incorporating innovative budget forecasting, building maintenance and future needs of the district to ensure viability. And this was the group that we used from the community to build that strategic plan. So again, as I said, there's one question, 5.98 million. 3.85 of that is for operations, and 2.13 of that is for current facility upgrades. And we reached out to C.G. Schmidt and had them do an independent audit of all of our facilities. They walked through our buildings. I had this question at one of the places, why did you use C.G. Schmidt? Why didn't you get multiple companies to come through and do it? C.G. Schmidt didn't come through and bid on these things and have the opportunity to work on these things. They came through and just did an independent audit of our facilities. And looking at the prices and talking with other superintendents in Columbia County, the price that C.G. Schmidt charged us is similar to what Findorf charges. CISA 10 does the same thing. They do that. They have an independent group come through and look at your facilities and tell you kind of, let's put together a 10-year facility study and what needs to be worked on. And as you can see, we're talking about $2.13 million over each of 5 years. It's a little over $10 million. Half of that's going to 2 roofs. The high school roof in this building, which by the time we replace it will be over 25 years old, and the elementary school roof. The other question I get all the time is elementary OSC, is that building going to be there? Why are you putting a roof on that? Again, C.G. Schmidt going through there, we looked at the lifespan of that building, and that life of that building should last us well over 20 years, which is a great investment for this community versus looking to build another building. Looking at technology upgrades throughout the district, chiller replacement, HVAC controls. Our track is at the end of its usable life. And we have water issues. We continue to resurface it and try to patch it. But again, it's just the end of the life. We need to look at the base, redo the base. And while we're doing that, redo the field that's inside it as well, so we don't have water sitting in there. Parking lots, elementary school playground, and do some upgrades to this, right? Track, talking about athletics. We also need to talk about our arts and music and make sure we're taking care of them. pictures of our roof, pictures of our track. And then looking at our operations. We're ending this year with a $700,000 deficit, which again was built in when we did the referendum. Typically when you do a 5-year referendum, you start off bringing in just a little bit more money than you need, knowing that at the end you're not going to have quite enough. And that's where we are. So we knew that we would be here. We knew the $1.7 million current referendum was going to end this year. And then we're looking at, we have needed to add some staff. We've added staff in the area of IT and school nursing. We're also going back to strategic planning, looking at attracting and retaining staff, looking at our support staff, looking at our teaching staff, and making sure that we are providing them the salaries that they need. We currently, even though we have the #1 ACT score in CISA 5, we are the second lowest starting teacher salary in CISA 5. Looking at staff benefits, we currently have a flat cap on our insurance contributions every year, and that has remained steady. Last year, we're looking at doing that, increasing that benefit. Didn't happen because of the state budget, the decisions that were made at state capitol. So we had to pull that off the table. We'd like to add that back in. Retirement increases, looking at when in our collective, what our staff get right now is $750 towards an HSA every year as they work here, and they get to keep that money if they retire from here. If they don't retire from here, that comes back to the district. The plan was, when that was first put in place, was to move that to have that become $1,000 every year. That hasn't happened. It's still $750, so this would move it up to $1,000. And then looking at our contracted services, we've all heard the commercials for new bus drivers. We all need bus drivers. So we know those costs are going to go up, our cleaning services costs are going to go up, and then just general and budget increases because of inflation that we have going on. This is just a timeline of where we're going. Started with the board making this official in January. I did presentations for the staff. I started doing presentations for municipalities. Have a Facebook Live on Thursday night. Coffee with the district administrator or coffee with superintendent on the first and third Saturdays down at Buttercream Bakery. And then there's a website out there if you want to look in. There's a lot of questions that people have. There's frequently asked questions, a referendum fact sheet, district at a glance sheet, and other things on our website. As I mentioned before, our tax rate is projected to go down with this referendum. And one of the things that people ask is, how can we pass a 5.98 referendum and actually have our taxes go down? This has been planned for by the district. The district has worked really hard at keeping this tax rate steady. They dropped it a little bit in 2021. But they've done that by using what they call defeasance, which has allowed us to help pay off our primary school and save the district and taxpayers $2.5 million in interest payments on that primary school already. They will stop doing that if the referendum passes, and that will drop that mill rate. So the example I would use to make, sometimes it's hard to think about how that had happened, is the example I use is if I was at my own home and I was paying down my mortgage a little early, right? I can pay ahead of my mortgage to try to save money long-term on interest. Well, my car breaks down, I need to get a new used car. Well, I can go out, get a new used car, make that car payment, drop my mortgage payment down to that minimum payment, and that overall payment might be less than the prepayment I was making on my mortgage before. So it fits in there. So it's very similar to what we're doing right now. And the idea, again, the board planned for this knowing that they'd come to referendum and wanted to make sure that the tax impact was negligible moving forward. Our current budget allocation, salaries and benefits make up about 63%, but that's a little misleading because transfer to other funds is a transfer of about $2.4 million, $2.5 million out to special education to help support benefits for benefits and salary for our staff in special education. And then purchase services, again, is mostly people as well. So our budget is mostly people. We're a very people-heavy industry, which I think most people know. So what will happen if the referendum doesn't pass? The community doesn't support the referendum. We will go into fund balance. That's a one-year solution. Our school board policy is that we try to have enough fund balance so we don't have to short-term borrow, because that costs money. So that is what we always try to do, but we would have to go into there. We would look at all federal and state grants. So for example, Title IV funding. We use some for help backfill some salaries, but we also use it for professional development and other supplies. We would use that to backfill more salaries. Our COVID relief funds that we've gotten, most of ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 have been spent. We spent them on long-term subs, permanent subs for our building last year and this year, so we keep our buildings running. We've used it for PPE, all those other things that we need for COVID. But we still have ESSER 3, which is about $860,000. We have some plans of how we'd like to use that, but we use that to backfill salaries and things like that. We will have to increase fees and cost of services, identify staff reductions through attrition, defer other maintenance projects, not the ones we've been talking about, delay our technology. So for example, on tonight's agenda, there is a Chromebook lease agreement that is going in front of the board, and my recommendation is that they approve that based on the referendum passing. Typically, we would like to approve that here in February, so we make sure we have them in the summer, so they're ready to go at the beginning of the fall. But if the referendum doesn't pass, that is something we would pause. So that is something that's going to happen. And then we still, with all that, we're still going to have to reduce staff. So I talked to the board specifically about some specific possibilities of that in closed session, and it's something that we will have to come out and I'll have to meet with staff here in the next month to talk to specific staff members who may be reduced if the referendum doesn't pass. And then we would prepare for the next referendum opportunity. We'd be back next fall, again, because a lot of these things we talked about are one-year options, except for the staff. And then what have we done? In the past 10 years, we've reduced approximately 17 staff, FTEs. We've reduced some programming. So for example, when I was the high school principal, I was given the task of reducing a certain amount from the high school, and so we reduced the family and consumer education program, and we no longer teach that. We've engaged contracted service providers, such as our cleaning company, to reduce our costs. We've, as I mentioned before, with our retirement and health insurance, and we've deferred maintenance and technology initiatives for referendum funding. Because that's one of the questions I get too is, you knew that at some point the high school was going to need a new roof. And we did. The board has made the decision to try to fund that through referendum, knowing that if they would have saved the money to try to pay for that, that would have came out of the classroom and would have came away from instruction. So what can people do? Be open to answer questions after you've seen this presentation. Refer people to the information sessions that are coming up in district referendum websites. Get out and vote and encourage other people to do the same. So here are some information sessions. We're going to try a Facebook Live on Thursday. Then following Tuesday, we have here, actually in the LGI, we are going to be doing a presentation very similar to this one. The following Wednesday, another one. And then Thursday, March 15th, we'll do another presentation at Lodi Primary School. And then, as I said, there's coffee with the superintendent at Buttercream Bakery from 9 to 10 a.m. on the first and third Saturdays of February and March. We're also doing presentations to municipalities, civic groups, and other things throughout the next month and a half. There you go. So again, I just wanted to give this presentation because, again, it's this board meeting is streamed live. I think pretty much almost everybody who's in here has probably seen this presentation, or most of them. But I wanted to have the opportunity, since we're streaming this out to the community, for the community to see it and have that opportunity. So, all right, thank you.
In addition to that presentation in the board docs, there's the frequently asked questions that community members have asked, and their answers are in there. And I would recommend everyone take a look at that also in the community. Next, we have on the agenda COVID mitigation.
All right, thanks, Adam. It has been, how do I say this? Since the last board meeting, our board meeting, it was a rough month in regards to COVID. The week of our last board meeting, we had 70 cases of COVID in the district. Long lines at our school testing site. We were able to work out with our testing partner, and they and the school added staff to help speed up that process. The following week, we had 82 cases, followed by 40 cases the ensuing week. This is where we were when we met with the Medical Advisory Committee. During that time, we were struggling to maintain our in-person instructional model due to staff absences. Our staff were remarkable to help cover for each other and make it work for students at each of our level. So for example, the day we had our last medical advisory meeting, we canceled we had administrative meeting that morning. We canceled because we needed our administrators to teach that day to keep our in-person instruction. So since our medical advisory committee met on February 1st, we've had 2 weeks of reduced spread of COVID. We're starting to find ourselves in a place like we did towards the end of December, where our medical advisory committee was planning on discussing relaxing some mitigation measures in January around semester break time. However, just before that discussion happened, Omicron showed up in the United States, and there were predictions that we were going to see a significant surge of cases in January, so that discussion switched from relaxing mitigation efforts to putting together contingency plans if we did not have enough bus drivers, food service, or instructional staff. Even though we were close to having to implement some of these plans, we were fortunate enough that we did not have to. So now we find ourselves in a similar situation where we were at the end of December, at the end of a surge where the cases are dropping quickly and there seems to be some light at the end of the tunnel. We all know that looking at that COVID crystal ball has not been an easy thing to do, but there's some reason for some hope and optimism. When the Medical Advisory Committee met on February 1st, they did relax face covering requirements for other co-curriculars to go without masks when they were performing or competing, similar to athletics, our play, mock trial, forensics, music. The data was not in place where it made sense to change any other mitigation at that time. As a matter of fact, the data from the cases that we had in the district continues to show very minimal transmission within our district, but substantial transmission in the community and within our homes. We've seen some cases of transmission within the school, but the majority of them at the high school level through some of our higher risk activities such as athletics. One of the things about the current board approved motion when it comes to the Medical Advisory Committee recommendation is that we don't have to wait for the board meeting to make some of the changes to our policy and procedures. For example, when the CDC dropped the quarantine requirements from 10 to 5 days, the Medical Advisory endorsed these changes and the district was able to quickly implement these right after winter break. We did not wait for a board meeting to make that change. I anticipate other changes as they came from the committee would be implemented in a similar fashion. The committee recommended that this before the DHS put forth guidance on quarantine. They were also ahead of the CDC and DHS when they recommended that students who were close contacts with positive cases in a universally masked environment should not be quarantined. So the group has not always followed lockstep with the CDC or DHS. The Medical Advisory Committee's recommendation currently makes few changes to our COVID mitigation policies. Similar to December, we've had 2 weeks where case numbers have come down, now a third week. I'd like to see that continue as we move into our next meeting. I've reached out to the committee last week to attempt to move our next committee meeting up to see if the committee would update any recommendations with cases falling as they have. Any changes once again be contingent on cases continuing to fall with the understanding that mitigation efforts, once loosened, could possibly be reinstated due to an outbreak. This is where we stand right now with our current Medical Advisory Committee recommendation.
So you said you reached out to them to move that meeting up to the end of February, and so they have done that, or you're
Yep, we're going to meet next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday
is the plan as of right now. I have to finalize that tomorrow, but 3 of the 4 doctors have indicated they can make it, and our healthcare staff can make it as well.
So if they deem masks to become highly recommended or something else, whatever they decide, they could do that next week and then could be adopted immediately.
Under the current board motion,
right,
is to follow their recommendations. So similar to when the CDC changed that guidance from 10 days to 5 days, we pivoted to that without it coming to the board.
Right.
It went because they recommended that, and then so we were able to pivot that way. So yes, if they would make a change, like if we met next Tuesday and they made a change, typically during that meeting we have a discussion. we put together that recommendation, they all verify that that's what we mean, and then we would implement that recommendation.
So, rubbing the crystal ball, if they do masks, highly recommended or something else, what does that do to quarantining and stuff? It just, is that a nightmare?
So that's the bigger question, right? So
Right.
what's the other, right? When you're talking about COVID and all the mitigation efforts we have, it's really don't want to rip it off like a Band-Aid,
Right.
right? It's unwinding pieces at a time. So the question becomes, because as of right now, if you go to an unmasked environment, close contacts go back to 6 feet. So right now, like we have in our classrooms, if you are universally masked, we do not quarantine. The question for them would be, do we follow then the DHS and CDC guidance and go to those, back to that 6 feet, because you're in an unmasked environment, and that has to be when it's universally masked, right? So even if some kids are wearing masks, it goes to, for example, if Christy and I are in a classroom, Christy's wearing a mask, I'm not, we're within 6 feet, we're both going.
Okay.
Under the current CDC guidance.
Unless
Now,
if
I
there's
don't know what their guidance will be
Right.
in that. That's one of my questions, is like, how do we do quarantines, right? What's that look like? The other piece of it would be, for example, when kids come back right now if you're COVID positive, you can come back after 5 days, but then you have to wear a mask for 5 days. If you're a close contact, vaccinated or not, you're also supposed to wear a mask. You need to wear a mask for 10 days.
Right.
So that would be a question for them. Are they going to follow that guidance? Because that would be, in my opinion, would be more important if not everybody's wearing a mask,
Right.
that the person who could be spreading the virus has the mask, because this is the most important part, is that source control.
Right. And then the other question that comes to my mind is testing, and we still can't get rapid testing.
So we'd have to look at that. So the rapid tests have freed up a little.
Okay.
So like a test to stay type of program,
Right.
possibly. Again, 4 weeks ago, we didn't have the capability, right?
Right.
I was reminded very clearly by a gentleman, and I was responsible for that whole long line, and I need to do something about it.
Yes.
And we did. But we are not testing as many people right now,
Great.
so there may be some possibility for us to do some more rapid testing. It becomes a logistics issue, right? Right now, we bring all our testing here.
Great.
It doesn't work for us to bring our primary school kids here,
No.
have them tested by a stranger, and then sit here for 15 minutes
Right.
while we wait to read a test, right? So we'd have to do that at the primary school. So how do we split that up and have people at different levels do that testing? So again, that's a logistic piece that we'll have to put in place. We haven't had the rapid test to do it,
Right.
or even try it. So it's, there was a lot of hope for some, at the beginning, right after the holiday break, that there would be more guidance on how to use rapid tests and how to do that. That's all been put on hold because of, A, it's such a big surge, and then secondly, the lack of rapid tests that were
Right.
available.
And then I had one more question. Oh, if numbers are going down, right, they're going down, if they continue to go down,
Mhm.
that would mean less quarantining services needed.
Mhm.
And so then those people might also be freed up to do testing.
Yeah, so that would be the hope, right?
places.
There'd be less numbers of people being tested, so you would be able to free some of the people up now that were testing to do
Right.
that. Or some of the people who were contact tracing, right?
Contact tracing, that's what I meant
Our
to
school
say,
nursing
yes.
staff would have a little more, right? They were working, 12, 15-hour days.
Right.
Here late at night, back here the next morning, here weekends, contact tracing.
And
that was,
other people who weren't on the nursing staff were helping with
yeah,
that
oh
also.
yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of people. It was all hands on deck, right?
Yes,
Just to make
yes.
sure. And again, it was not just a Lodi
Right.
issue, it was everywhere else. But again, our data shows pretty clearly that transmission was really at home, right? And it's really hard. It's hard to separate at home, totally understandable, and in the community.
Right.
We didn't have a ton of transmission even at school, even during our surge, when we looked at, again, because we contact traced those kiddos.
And it was not easy to contact trace those.
No, it took a lot of time, right?
Yes.
We added people, and and we cut back on some of that contact tracing, because again, we weren't seeing some of those things in the classroom, so we cut back to more of the higher risk environments, which was lunchtime and snack time and those type of things.
Okay. Anybody else have questions?
I have a couple things that I wanted to bring up.
Ashley, could you speak in the mic so I can hear you? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. I have a couple things I wanted to bring up. I brought it up before at a previous meeting, but the rules being different for people who are vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And since then, I've had some experiences that are kind of appalling to me, and I think we really need to revisit that, as obviously being vaccinated is a choice, and some people make that choice and that's what they want to do to protect themselves. And at this point, with however many variants there are, it does make it less dangerous for them to have it, and in some cases it might even prevent them from getting it, but they can still contract it and spread it. So they should have the same quarantine rules as everybody else. Personally, I was a close contact, and so I went home and I went and got tested, sat at home, because I could either quarantine for 5 days or go get tested. So I was like, well, I'll miss at least school as I possibly can. So I went and got tested negative, and I was like, oh, great. Like, the quarantine rules were already reduced to 5. Like, once I get my test back, I can go back to school. So I get my test back, it's negative, and I come back to school like midday. I came right when I got my test and went on with my day, the rest of the day like normal, and then the next day I come to school and I get told I have to sit by myself at lunchtime because I won't have a mask on. So I'm asking why we changed it to 5 days for unvaccinated students if when we come back to school, we're still a danger to students, so we have to sit by ourselves at lunch.
Yeah. So that's a great question, Ashley. So that's why a lot of districts didn't go to the 5 days. They stayed at 10 for quite a while, that they continued to quarantine at that, because the data came out that, like, I wish I had it from me, but it was like, you know, there was 40% of kids still after that fifth day were still shedding some virus. And so one of the things that we put in place was to make sure that we wanted kids back in school, but then how can we make sure we're protecting other kids? So making sure that we increase that separation at lunchtime, because that's the time when you have your mask off and be the most likely to infect somebody else. It was one of those, again, trying to, and we've heard that today, like balancing that risk versus the benefit of having kids in school versus the risk of them being contagious. And that was one of the things that, again, the Medical Advisory Committee felt like that risk was probably worthwhile as long as you're taking those other steps, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then with that, again, I'm just going to bring it up. I don't think it's really fair, like, in general, like discriminating against the people who are decided not to be vaccinated. Because right now, if you're unvaccinated and you're a close contact, whether that's in the community or not, whether you report it to the school or not, you don't have to quarantine at all. And if you're unvaccinated, you need to quarantine. And I don't know, as me, like being a student, I'm in really difficult classes. Like I'm in AP Psychology, I'm in the Spanish 5 class, which is like a college class, which is very difficult to make up. And having to be 5 days or even 3 days is really difficult compared to a vaccinated student who wouldn't have to miss that and who wouldn't have to try to play catch up or miss a lecture that's really unable to make up because we're not online at any capacity anymore. And I also had another example of a student who I had asked a couple questions to. He was a close contact with someone in the community and hadn't reported it to the school, but had asked the office ladies about how he can get tested and had told them that he planned to get tested because he was in close contact. And after that, they continued to send him back to class. And he sat in class the rest of the day, woke up the next day not feeling well, went and got tested and tested positive. And he was vaccinated. So after asking and saying he was planning to get back, or planning to get tested. They allowed him to go back to class. And so in my eyes, that makes the school liable for however many students that he had exposed in the rest of that day. And I just think it's not okay at any capacity, and that just proves that whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, you're still at risk of spreading, like whether or not, and just the fact that he said that he planned on going to get tested. And they said, okay, you can head back to class. And if I was a close contact, they'd be like, get to the testing site. Because I'm not vaccinated. They'd be like, go home or go get tested. And then also...
Yeah. So let me go back to that, Ashley. So
Sure.
Again, that's based out of the CDC, Department of Health guidance, and Columbia County and Dane County's health guidance, right? The epidemiologists at those levels, at all those different levels, are the ones who have talked about students having to quarantine or adults having to quarantine if they're not vaccinated versus vaccinated. So that's a medical decision that's been made by those, and that our medical advisory committee has followed along with that. You know, the data that they had was showing that people who were unvaccinated were contracting this virus 3 times as much as people who weren't. Now, whether that will still hold up over the last month, I don't know, right? And again, it goes back to that risk-reward piece, right? We've heard it talked about, and people don't like to talk about risk-reward, but that's a risk-reward piece. Like, is the risk worth, you know, when are you going to make that decision? And so that's what the medical field has determined, right? So the CDC, the Department of Health Services, State of Wisconsin, right? People who study these things. So they're the ones who have determined those things, and we have, you know, followed what the Medical Advisory Committee, which is following right in line with what those have been going on, and that's been done in both Dane and Columbia County.
Yep, and that does make sense. I just think we need to pay more attention to what's happening in our school, because in students' eyes, that's like, I think students are ready. See, I don't know, sometimes like, even they come up to me and they're like, what the heck, why do we still have masks on our faces? And all I can say is they have good intentions. Like,
Yeah, no, I agree.
Everything's to keep us safe.
Yep.
But in students' eyes, it's literally discrimination. Everywhere we go in our school, it's be inclusive, welcome everybody, no matter what. But here, in this case, because I decide with my body that I don't want to get a vaccination, you're saying you're missing 5 days of school. You're going to get tested, compared to a student who decides to, doesn't have to do anything. And whether it's a medical decision or not, this is an ethical decision on being equal to every student in our district.
Ashley, I don't think that you're wrong, and I thank you for speaking up and speaking your mind, because I know that that's super, super hard to come in as a student on a board full of adults and to take the bull by the horn and be the first one to speak. So don't take me as cutting you off right now. I really, really value what you said and appreciate you voicing your concerns. I, for one, would like to ask the board, I would like the answer to the why. Why do we have our COVID mitigation strategy in place right now?
Could you be clearer again? I didn't hear the whole thing. Why, what?
Why do we have COVID mitigation strategy in place right now? What is the why?
I would say to mitigate COVID spread.
So kids don't get sick, or to keep kids in school? To me, it's 2 reasons. There's one or the other. Like, is there an end result into why we're masking our kids? Because I'm hearing multiple things. It was, we instituted these again, and we didn't let the younger kids because they didn't have the option of having a vaccine. They now have the option of vaccine, and they're still masked. Is it to keep our kids in school? Is that why we're continuing to have the mask mandate when places all around us are loosening up, when the vaccine is available for anybody and anybody who wants it? Why are we still pushing forward with quarantine policies and mask policies at this point?
we're in a global pandemic, and that is the things that you do during that kind of stuff. That is what doctors recommend to do.
For what reason, though? What is the recommendation for?
My personal reason would be to keep kids in school and to keep our staff healthy so they can be here for the kids in school.
Okay.
Those would be the two things that I
So
would.
then that would bring me to the data that I asked for this week from Jean of how many kids were quarantined in the month of January. And out of that, how many were positive with COVID and how many were negative. From the data that I read, unless I read this incorrectly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 671 kids were quarantined in the month of January across our district. 131 of them were positive. 540 of those were negative. That, to me, is not keeping kids in school. 540 negative kids were quarantined for a period of time, sent out of school because they were a close contact in one form or fashion, whether it was close contact in school, close contact in community, whatever, they were kept out. One of my children was on here twice. She was quarantined from school twice and never one time had COVID. She had to come back to school after we had a negative test. The test that was good enough for our government to send to us was negative. I told the school, hey, she wasn't feeling well, but out of precaution, I gave her a test. She's negative, so I'm going to give her 1 day of rest and send her back to school. And they would not let me send her back to school until I had a PCR test. I had to go back and find a test. My husband had to run around and do all of this stuff, take her, ended up being negative. Several days later, she went back to school, took a test, and failed it because she was gone for the time that they studied on it. And when she was asked what she could do better next time to better prepare, her answer was not get quarantined. Now, thankfully, the teacher was gracious and worked with her and gave her a makeup test, and she was able to pass it at that point. But what it did to her psyche and what it did to her mental health was crazy because she had just gotten quarantined before that off of purely anecdotal data. It was not written down, it was not recorded, but yet a teacher said her mask was below her nose, so they quarantined her for several days. I think it's time, as a district, that we move forward. If our reason is to keep kids in school, we can still keep kids in school. Kids will get sick. All of those numbers that I had, unless I'm incorrect and I don't know anything, 131 positive cases, they all recovered. Kids will get sick. A virus wiped through the same time COVID did, with the exact same symptoms. The kids they were fine. I'd like to present a motion on the table to go to optional masking across the district effective immediately, and I hope somebody would second me for that.
So could you repeat the last sentence, because you're drained off? So you want to do optional masking across the district?
Effective immediately.
And then what was the next sentence?
I hope somebody will second me for that.
I'm sorry.
I hope somebody will second me for that.
Thank you. So there's a motion, if someone would like to second. And you can have a discussion about it. We generally are loose with the discussion rules, and so, I mean, you could, in my mind, what you're saying is go back over time, go back in time, right? And loosen the rules back then, and then how many cases would we have? How many quarantines would we have had? Or no quarantines? Or how many teachers would we have had out, right? As Vince stated earlier, the admins were doing all those teacher roles because teachers were out.
They weren't necessarily out for COVID, because I asked that specific question as well.
We were at the limit of almost closing schools down because we did not have enough adults in the roles to watch kids.
But not because of COVID.
Either way, there wasn't enough, right?
But Adam, we have a mask mandate in place because you want to keep people in school. And then you're saying people are not in school because of COVID. It's not necessarily that they're out of school because of COVID.
But do you have the data of if they were themselves home with COVID, or if they were home with a child that had COVID, or another family?
I asked for that and I didn't get it.
And then of those 540 that were quarantined that didn't get COVID, how many of them tested? Because a lot of people in quarantine aren't also getting tested. I mean, those are other numbers I would need, I think, for that information.
And it truly sounds like you're having more problems with the quarantine than with the masking.
It's two different things.
That was going to be my next motion.
Well, I think that if we continue to have quarantining and drop the masking, then we are really going to be going backwards as far as keeping kids in school. To me, it seems like it has to be a modification to quarantining and masking at the same time. And dropping both of those at the same time, I feel is a very large shift from trying to keep people in the school safe, children and the adults, to saying you're on your own. Like this, you know, whatever happens is going to happen. You know, like we don't quarantine because of the colds and flu and all those other things, obviously. So to get to a point where we can say that same thing about COVID, I'm just saying it's a very big psychological shift for me to say, I'll let, you know, I will agree with letting COVID burn through the school by dropping masking and quarantining. Now, at some point, we'll not, you know, we will be there when the numbers are lower, and it's possible it'll be very, very soon. I don't feel comfortable doing it tonight. No. I think that another thing that I would like to look at is providing N95s for staff, because we will be at some point in a position where when we drop the mask mandates, that we're still going to have vulnerable people, and we're not going to have the end of the variants. So one thing I would like to see is for us to, you know, perhaps we could get N95s at a cost-effective bulk discount and provide those to staff. I'm not saying I'll be wanting to mask forever, but I can't psychologically shift to letting it be a free-for-all at this point.
On March 1st, if Dane County follows through and drops their mask mandate, that will be everywhere in the state that you can go without a mask in public.
Well, and Christy, I think that's why the medical advisory team is meeting prior. They're meeting next week again.
Yeah.
So just,
It's not saying that
And so
we
if they,
won't.
just so I can jump in, Christy, Dane County is going to drop their mask mandate. So they officially today said that as of March 1st is the last day for that. So.
I also wanted to come back and commenting on what you said, Christy, is that at this point, anybody who wants to get vaccinated has got vaccinated. And if it's as effective as you say it is to have different quarantine rules for either one, then they should be safe from the people that are unvaccinated or who are going to give them COVID. And if students want to wear a mask and protect themselves because they're effective as you say it is and they're keeping our numbers down, they can still wear a mask and be safe. It should be a choice. And if they have made those decisions to protect themselves and can still continue to make those decisions to protect themselves, they should be able to make that decision just as somebody else, like me, I wouldn't have a mask on in school if I didn't have to. I should be able to make the choice to do that because it's my health and they've done what they can do to protect themselves. Just as I'm not going to purposely like go and breathe in someone's face. Even it's a transition period. We're not going to go straight up next to someone. We can still have, oh, you're going to sit this far away from somebody, which is okay. But we have to take steps somewhere because, especially Omicron, it's like a cold. Kids are going to get sick. I have been sick numerous times. I don't even know how. I've probably been tested 12 times in the past 2 years, and I've had antibody tests and everything, and completely negative. And I've been out of school quarantined because I had allergies, my doctor said. Like, it's not the end of the world anymore, and we can't keep seeing it like that because students are young and they can recover, and staff are vaccinated and they can wear an N95 if they would like. You can do things to help prevent without punishing everybody.
and I think we have to remember too, we have taken some steps. I mean, look at our athletic department, look at our plays, look at our theaters, look at all of the extra stuff that we have taken steps. It's not ripping off a Band-Aid. We have piloted certain programs. And okay, there may be cases through those programs, but COVID will be with us in the long haul. People will get sick, and thankfully, these variants that are coming down, you are correct. They are changing the virus so that they're not as life-threatening. And I think with taking those steps, it's proven that we can go farther and we don't have to rely upon a medical advisory team. And when I got their information back from some of the questions that I asked about the effectiveness of cloth masks versus N95 masks, I mean, some of their points were they don't have the data, so they're basing it on anecdotal accounts of observations and unpublished data by healthcare professionals. They said it's the polite thing to do. They said the best mask is tolerability and wearability or effectiveness, and that just doesn't make sense to me. Like, if there's one mask that's so much better than, but you're saying the one that has the best wearability. I think we are just at a place where we can loosen these mitigations, and if it worked for our athletics department and we didn't wipe out our entire athletics department, I don't think we have to wait for our medical advisory team to make those decisions for us. If they're meeting next Tuesday, we're days away. We can make that decision now as a board and allow our parents to choose for their children, and in some cases, the older kids, to choose for themselves.
I'm more towards starting to look at unmasking and making masks.
I can't hear you.
I'm more towards looking at unmasking and moving towards masks, highly recommended. I would feel much more comfortable waiting a couple more weeks until we've come further out of this latest surge than right at this moment. And yes, I'm totally fine with saying no child in Lodi has died, but children in Wisconsin have died in high school and middle school. So I'm still not at the point where I'm ready to take that risk. For one child to die in our district would be tragic. When we've done it this long, why can't we wait 2 more weeks?
I don't look at it as us taking a risk if their parents allow them to walk outside of their house at any point without a mask on.
Well,
it's not on us.
The problem with the public school is we are a public school. So what happens is there are mothers at home getting chemotherapy as well as fathers. There is kids in this district, and because of HIPAA and FERPA, we can't know all the kids who are immune compromised. And those are the kids that are going to go down. And on my watch, as a nurse always, I wasn't going to try to lose a life. And so again, if everything keeps going down the way it looks, and those lines outside school sure looks like it's going down, we've been doing it this long. 2 more weeks is not going to hurt anybody. And it might make a huge difference.
Yeah, but I think that reasoning is unfair, and it pulls to the heartstrings, and I understand that. But there's, for every kid that has a mother at home doing chemo, there's a kid suffering with their mental health because they got told they were sent home time and time again, never had COVID, and then goes back to school and fails the test. So
well, that should
I do
not
think 2
happen
weeks
because
matters. I do think 2 weeks matters, and I do think that we are the elected board to be able to make the decision. And when the medical advisory team tells me that it's off of anecdotal accounts and observations and unpublished data, I'm perfectly fine taking it back out of their hands and making the decision for our district.
I just have one more thing I want to say. No kid should have that problem with the test. And again, being a school nurse for many, many years, if a child was sick with anything, this was way before COVID, and they were out for a certain amount of time, it was up to the parent and to the kid to make it obvious, especially in high school. Little kids, the teacher's going to know because they have them in all the classes. But especially for the older kids, somebody needs to advocate for them, and everybody's saying that the parents have become way better advocates since they got involved. Well, that's a place where a parent needs to talk to a teacher ahead of time or to someone ahead of time before that test even came up, because that could have been avoided. That didn't have to happen. That child didn't have to fail and go through that.
It doesn't have to do with the communication. Your biggest reason for this is to keep kids in school. And one day of me being out of class can put so much stress on me for a week.
Yes.
I went to go visit a college. I was gone for 3 days, and I'm still not caught up a week and a half later. It does make a huge difference, and whether you contact them ahead of time, you email them, it's not the same as sitting in class. And I know because I sat and did online school and was failing chemistry for a whole semester and then half of another, and I said, okay, I'm going to go back into school. In a week that I was in school, I had my grade up by 3 letter grades. it's not a matter of contact. It's a matter of allowing kids to stay in school. Because I know firsthand how much that impacts my mental health, how much that impacts my education. And that's what's really important. And that's what you guys know is really important too, is keeping kids in school. And we need to do that.
Yep.
Would this be a compromise to consider? So if the medical advisory board is meeting on the 22nd, you said?
Yeah, they're meeting on the 22nd.
So depending on their recommendation, right, if they choose to not do something else, right, if they say we're going to just keep going to the same path, we could call a special board meeting on the 24th and have this discussion in light of that recommendation on the 22nd.
If I'm not going to get a second, then yeah, it's the next best thing.
You got to talk a little slower, I'm sorry.
If I'm not going to get a second, that's the next best thing for me.
Okay.
So saying that if the medical advisory committee does not recommend dropping the mask mandate at the next meeting, we would have a special board meeting to discuss that
on the 24th,
on the
2 days later,
24th?
yeah.
Is that what?
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't have my calendar in front of me.
I just have a couple of comments or questions.
Yeah, sure.
So today I looked at the DHS website, and pretty much all of Wisconsin is in a critically high situation yet. But that was data through February 8th, so it's almost a week old.
Right.
So, I mean, we really have to see what that is, you know, as far as updating. So I'm a little confused about wanting, I guess, to unmask everybody at this point. And then the other thing is the liability. How, and we've talked about this before, if masks are optional, how do we know? Because if kids are a minor and under 18, technically it's their parents that are responsible for them masking. And how are we supposed to, as a school district, enforce what the parents' wishes are? And I think we've struggled also with that. So there is some liability to that.
I mean, on the other hand, I think we've done a pretty good job masking the children of the parents who don't want their kids masked. So I think we pivot, and now we just go the opposite way.
I also think that parents who 100% want their kids to be masked do that everywhere. Like any store, no matter what county they're in, that child is programmed to wear their mask. They don't think it's okay not to wear one. I work in a store now, and I see 3-year-olds walking around with a mask, and if they take a sip out of their sippy cup, they quickly, right after, they want to pull it back up. And so I think that really, if parents 100% want their child to wear a mask, that they're programmed to wear it. And if parents are more comfortable, they can contact a teacher specifically saying, my child is to wear a mask, and they should be wearing a mask in your class. Can you please let me know if that's not happening so then I can take care of it? Because that's the parent's responsibility, and they should have the conversation with their child. A teacher shouldn't have to, and they can just relay the information if they need to. And I know that kind of sounds like a lot of work, but that compared to a teacher sitting in their classroom having to tell a student to pull their mask up above their nose every 2 seconds, every 5 minutes, is much less and much less stressful for a teacher.
Agreed.
So there's a motion, but no second.
Which motion are we on?
Christie's.
Yeah, but
motion.
which one?
Masking, right?
Yeah, but which one that we?
Just the masking is the only one she made.
Okay.
So hearing no second, did you want to make another motion?
So then the motion would be that if the medical advisory team does not recommend optional masking, we would have a special meeting on February 24th to have another COVID mitigation discussion.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion by Christie and a second by Angie. Is there any further discussion on that?
Sure. So your thought is good. But you're gonna be forcing us to go back and make a healthcare decision. And outside of Terry, are you qualified to make a healthcare decision?
This healthcare decision, yes.
I think that she is qualified in that, considering that even the health committee didn't have any data to give her on whether the masks were effective or not, and that the masks that we are wearing are the ones that are most comfortable, not the ones that are most effective and are protecting someone for a specific reason.
So I just want to jump in with what the Medical Advisory Committee said about masking, right? They said with the Omicron variant, right now there is not any peer-reviewed medical research that has been done yet with the new variant regarding masking. They said the issue that N95 masking, if you are the only person wearing a mask in a room, N95 is the way to go, but it's very difficult for people to wear them consistently for a long time. So what the Medical Advisory Committee shared was that the best mask is the one that people will wear consistently so that everybody is masked in a room. Because you need universal masking for that to work. If you're only, and the example the one doctor gave was, for example, if you have one kid in a room, even if they have an N95 and nobody else has a mask on, and there's COVID in the room, COVID cases in the room, that student's probably going to get COVID. In a room where everybody's masked, the transmission rate in COVID is very low. So again, that's what the doctors of the Medical Advisory Committee said. The issue with the N95s is they're a stronger mask, but it's very difficult to keep them on, especially kids' faces. So their recommendation is you get masks that people are going to wear, are more effective than masks that maybe, if they're worn appropriately, are more effective, but are constantly down or around. So that was where they came from when they talked about
So if we go optional, then the N95s, for those parents that are wanting their children to have further protection, sounds like the best route for them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right. So it's going to be, it's a safer mask. It restricts airflow even more.
But not if
But they
they're
have to
the
make,
only
they have to
one
make
in
that
the
choice,
room.
right? But it's not, none of them is perfect, right? Again, that's the idea behind it. All COVID, and I'm just trying to clarify what the Medical Advisory Committee shared. And when you look at masking and everything else, it's the Swiss cheese approach, which we've talked about several different times at this level, right? Masking is one of those things.
I don't know, I guess it's still hard for me to see the difference if it's just finding a mask that you wear instead of focusing on whether it's actually doing anything. I've seen kids walking around with the high school with one of these masks on, but with the back layer cut out. Like, what? That needs to be the focus, not whether, because what's the difference if I have a mask on my face, I look politically correct, whether it's working or not, they make it sound like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that was not their goal, right? When I've talked to them about that, and that was not their goal. Their goal is to say, if you're going to wear a mask, the best mask you can have on is the one you'll keep on your face. And right, that's again assuming that people are wearing their mask appropriately and not doctoring their masks like you talked about, if students are doing that. The question was asked, what is the best? Like, should we be asking them to wear N95s or surgical masks? And they were like, if you can keep mask on, that's the best for them.
There are school districts that have, just for reference, there are school districts who have started to require N95s or KN95s versus the regular mask. That's not obviously on the table for us to discuss, but it is, there's a point to that. I'm wearing an N95 right now, and it's the most comfortable mask I wear. It fits well, doesn't fog up my glasses, and I can breathe through it better than many of my other masks, so just
And Ashley, I don't think you were on
Carrie.
the board yet when this came up, but and I don't know where we'd find it again, but there was all the graphs done, and there was really a big difference when they, studied the transmission of particles. With both people had a mask on, it cut it down a lot. And that was the idea of, like, you know, yes, it's great if you're wearing a mask alone, you know, that's protecting you, but if you're in a room and there's a bunch of other people without one and you're stuck there for more than 15 minutes, it really does bring it up compared to if people have masks on.
So the one thing I would
Because
just...
that didn't get just pulled out of the air. That was one of the studies they did at the very beginning.
I would just move... I try not to go down the rabbit hole of masks or what kind of mask, I think, because people have, as this board, I mean, you can hear from the opinions on the board, people have kind of made up their mind, right? Regardless of what information gets shared, people have kind of made up their mind about either I believe in masks or I don't believe in masks. So I think spending time debating that at this point is probably not going to get the board any closer to any decision that they want to make.
No. Can I call the question then? Can we vote on?
Yeah, I just want to finish the discussion, that's all.
Oh, I know, that's why I'm just saying, can we call the question?
Do you have more discussion? No?
Nope, calling the question so that we take the vote for my motion
Yeah,
to
no,
have
we
the
definitely
special
will.
meeting.
Don't worry, we'll get there. Does anybody else have any discussion?
Read it back again. Read the motion so that we know exactly what we're voting on. Please.
Good, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. Next, we have the Chromebook leases.
I talked about this during my referendum presentation. We have bids here for our Chromebook lease. We typically go out and lease Chromebooks here in February, so we have them in the summer in time to get them in our kids' hands to start the school year. Tyler Potter did a nice job going out and getting bids, shared them with the Facility Finance Committee. They made a recommendation to move forward with TRA, who we have been using, based on the price, including, if you look at the prices, there's one that was a little cheaper, but they didn't include the maintenance piece that TRA did. If they would, then their price would become more. But the recommendation from the administration is that we approve these leases contingent on the referendum passing, because if the referendum does not pass, then we will take this year's seniors' Chromebooks and hand them to next year's incoming freshmen as a fifth-year device.
Adam, I move to approve the lease of the replacement Chromebooks through the company TRA on a 4-year lease contingent upon the community supporting the upcoming referendum.
I'll second.
Motion by Bill and a second by Barb. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. Next, we have temporary COVID-19 leave.
Yeah, the Contract Review Committee has been discussing the possibility of offering COVID-19 leave to staff at each of their meetings this year. With the most recent surge of COVID-19, the committee felt it was the right time to revisit this issue with staff. The committee unanimously approved moving to the full board with the recommendation of approval of a temporary COVID-19 related leave retroactive to August 18th through June 30th.
I'll move to approve temporary COVID-19 leave for staff as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by myself with Angie as a second. Is there any further discussion?
So for people that had borrowed time off or whatever, are people going to now get their times
Yeah,
back?
so we will put together a process through the business office in the next couple days of how people can go back and claim this time, and then if that would have impacted them borrowing time from other people, then that time will go back, right?
Okay.
So we would make sure that, for people watching at home, one of the things in our handbook is if you are out of school and for an illness or things like that and you run out of sick leave, you can ask your colleagues to donate sick time on your behalf. And that sick time goes to a colleague, and if it doesn't get used, it disappears. We would retroactively go back, and if those requests didn't need to be made, then we would put those back into people's accounts.
Okay.
Right. Make people whole as much as possible.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. There are no first policy readings and no second policy readings. There are no gifts and donations. Administrative reports. Curriculum. Yeah, come to the mic, please.
Take it.
You hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. The first section on my report is just an update on the professional practice goal group. The group of teachers in the district are continuing to meet to talk about and enact making community connection partnerships, and we're in a great spot with those educators. Some of them have really jumped ahead, made connections, have had businesses or other service organizations into their classrooms already, and have had a number of wonderful activities already occurring for students. And you can see a few of those right there, and I'm sure that's one part of the goal you may recall, but then the flip side of that, the other part, is the job/career fair, and Mr. Jelnick is heading that up, so I'm sure he would be able to give an update on that as well. But what we've done is each teacher who's part of the Community Connections group, they have outlined so far who they are looking to reach out to. We also have had, for this last meeting, we had Joel Mindham from CISA 5 in, who works with us around our Carl Perkins grant, and he is the Career and Technical Education Director for CISA 5, and so he has many connections to various industry organizations within our region, and so any teacher who had yet to identify a potential community business partnership, he is kind of working with them on how to go about that process. So you can see just a few. We have a number of connections that either are happening already have happened already or happening in the second half of the school year. And you can see a few of those represented there in the document. And any community members that are listening, if you have a business and you'd like to connect with our classrooms, please feel free to reach out to me. We have something where I'm designing a page on our website where you'll be able to get more information, and we can direct that to you to that as well, but that's under construction currently. I hope to have it up in the next week or two. The next part on here is this Friday we have our staff professional development / collaborations days, and so you'll be able to see just a brief schedule of things that we have going on there. We have things that we just have to do that are mandated by the state, things like board exam training for that assessment, the ACT exam training. We have what we call professional learning communities, so teachers will come together and they will meet together in content area teams, and they will just talk about the various things that they want students to be able to know and be able to do in their class, how they're going to support students who potentially already know those things, and how they're going to support students who potentially struggle learning it the first time. And so they'll have those discussions, and then we'll also come together as 4K-12 content teams, where maybe like our math department across the entire district will come together, and we'll talk about vertical alignment so that we ensure the things students are learning at the primary school, get them ready for the elementary school, and then the middle school, and then the high school. So these are key opportunities for our staff to come together to do that alignment. And then the last part, I just highlighted a little bit of our internal winter assessment benchmark information board. You've already seen this information, but I put it in the report for the community as well. And this connects to student growth that we are seeing that's connected to our strategic plan areas.
Thank you. LCAT report.
Okay, so Brian has been trained to be an instructor for 2 programs through the American Lung Association. The in-depth program is an evidence-based program designed as an alternative to suspension or citation for students who have been caught with tobacco products on school grounds. The capital N, capital O, capital T program is a voluntary evidence-based program designed for students who would like help quitting the use of tobacco products. Brian will start the first in-depth program in February with 2 students, and then the whole NOT program will be offered for students by April. Brian has also been trained, or has also trained 13 food staff in the use of Narcan, and that's the antidote to a opioid overdose. LCAT will be presenting at the February Staff in Service Day, and Paula will show the Ben Court highlight video to staff. Ben was on before this year, and then Brian will conduct a Narcan training for any interested staff. So Narcan is given as an injection.
Thank you. Ashley?
Sure. So I just have a couple things. Our FFA chapter got a volunteer award for like across the state. All of the county fairs are, some can be nominated. And we won the volunteer award for doing our day at the fair. So that was cool. And then the music department has Soul and Ensemble coming up on February 26th. So we're preparing for that. And then some students have brought up to me concerns about our dress code and some students being allowed to wear hats in our school while others are not allowed to. So we're going to be talking to our school administration about that.
Perfect. Student services. Hello.
First off, I want to welcome Jill Ziegler to our staff. She's joining our school nursing team. Previously worked in the Wanakee School District and before that at Meritor Hospital. She is a resident of Lodi. She's been a great addition. She's jumped right in and is doing the day-to-day responsibilities at the elementary school and at the high school. The next section here is about the Columbia County Coordinating Team. I will be our district representative for this coordinating team. The goal is to address gaps in resources or services, analyze crisis system response errors to plan accordingly for the future. We have an upcoming meeting this week on Wednesday, and I will be bringing information back to our administrative team after that. And finally, I would like to recognize our school counseling team. Last week was National School Counseling Week. A huge thank you to our team, Val Bilke, Michaela Lee, Sienna Calwert, Ann Kirschbaum, and Grant Lepke for the support that they provide to our students. Some of these supports include universal teaching, their work with small groups and individual students, and in addition, they are a valuable resource for our teachers and families within our community.
Thank you. Lodi Primary School.
Hello there. Just a couple things to share is we had, obviously it was Friendship or Valentine's Day today and 100th Day last week, so we've had a lot of excitement. In addition, we had Global School Play Day. This is something that our PBIS team had brought forward. It was a chance for kids to explore and problem solve in a variety of different areas. We had some activities outside. Unfortunately, the weather did not allow us to sled, but we did have some outdoor activities as well as indoor, but just really giving kids a chance to experiment and do some problem solving like they do with their STEAM. So that was a huge highlight for them. Report cards went home February 4th, and that just gave parents a chance to see the areas that kids are doing really well and then how we're going to help support them moving forward. At the end of January, we had our universal screening meetings where we were looking at our school-wide data, but then breaking it down to figure out our plans for students that need that extra practice or enrichment and how we're going to support them moving forward. And then today we had a training that Dr. Carls had brought forward from CISA 5 on interactive read aloud. And so the teachers got a chance to look at some of the materials that we've been using so far this year, but it's a mentor text and then working through asking them some strategic questions and just helping them build that love of reading. So, thank you.
Thank you. And the elementary OSC school.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Good.
Couple of things to share. I'm just going to give up at this point. It's going to work a lot better with me holding it than trying to lean over. So a couple of quick things. Like Amy said, we did our data review meetings. We've completed 3rd, 4th, LES 4th, 5th, and OSC. And the very last one is coming up for 3rd grade on Thursday. And the link in the document there shows you the slide deck that we went through. And for the first time, we reviewed with our staff all of our behavior events by building and by grade level. We also reviewed that SEL screener information that we've shared with you guys in the past as well. And in some of those slides, we used the 3 SEL measures that are on the district scorecard. So just some alignment from the strategic plan, the scorecard, to the building and to the individual grade level information. The table below that shows where LES and OSC students are according to iReady, so I'm not going to read that to you, but it's there. And then you get to see some examples and representatives from our science fair. So we had our science fair on Saturday, January 24th, I believe. I'd have to look at it. I should have looked at the calendar, but I don't have that date in front of me right now. But it was a Saturday. We had several students present and attend, and had a nice event in the gym at the little gym at the elementary school.
Okay, thank you. Middle school.
All right, good evening, everybody. So first thing I want to do is recognize our new choir teacher, Hunter Alds, and he is brand new, so he actually finished his student teaching on January 21st, and then he was in our Lodi Middle School and Elementary School on January 24th, so he literally had a super quick turnaround, so I want to recognize him as a new staff member. You can see the students there. Student of the Month theme was Perseverance. These are students that were recognized by our Lodi Middle School staff. So we finished up our iReady as well, and we have a lot to celebrate, and I want to congratulate our staff on the growth of our students, specifically in the area of reading. And you can see from the data snapshot here, 59% of our students have already made 1 year's worth of growth this year already, and I don't want to make this seem like it's simple. Our staff has put a ton of time in order to make this happen. So I want to congratulate them and the students on their efforts, and I'm glad to see that it's paying off. Down below you can see it was requested that I continue to give data from our library checkouts, and you can see we continue to exceed prior years, and a big piece of this is Paula Tunn and Lori Gwynn giving fantastic books for our students to read. And another initiative that we have to help our literacy programming is we've instituted a lot more time for sustained silent reading for our students. So, and you can see there's just a lot more books that are being checked out on a monthly basis, which is fantastic. I want to say thanks to Michelle Howe for running our blended agricultural class. So she has worked with 3 grants from the Sauk Prairie Hospital Foundation, Sauk Prairie Healthcare Foundation, and Wisconsin Society of Science Teachers to get I don't even know what it's called, a tower garden, I guess is the way I'll put it, at our middle school. So it's literally a garden that stands upright. It's housed in our LMC, and it is growing lettuce currently. And as a matter of fact, within the last couple of weeks, our students had an opportunity to eat the lettuce. So once a month, every 28 days, they'll take a harvest, and that harvest will be served at our lunch, which is fantastic for our kids. And then I have some other classroom activity pictures here, and I want to also recognize Paula Tunn for organizing Battle of the Books for our school, and that is all from the middle school.
Thank you. High school.
All right, thank you. First of all, I do want to recognize one staff member. His name is Mr. Doug Haved. He's actually on paternity leave right now, but he makes an effort of coming up, and he conducts our pep band, and he even plays in our pep band, which is pretty awesome, because I think that's what I would want to do if I was conducting the pep band. So I wanted to recognize him. A couple student recognitions, senior Ella Poles and freshman Connor Scrum. So right around this year, we do have some students that like to have signing days at our high school, so they have an opportunity to have a picture taken with their parents and coaches and talk a little bit about what they're going to do when they go to college as far as athletics. And Ella Poles is going to be going to UW La Crosse to run track. And then freshman Connor Scrum. So
So there are a lot of our students that actually compete in lots of different ways outside of our school, and the example is Connor Scrum. So his parents let me know, and I thought this was really cool, that he is going to state in snowboarding, and that is not affiliated with our school, but more impressively is that he received the Conference Sportsmanship Award. And that is a single award given to an individual who not only supported his own team throughout the competitions, but showed support and great sportsmanship for other teams. So really proud of Connor. Next thing, I think Mira Potter talked a little bit about mock trial, and it's really exciting right now because our Lodi forensics and mock trial teams are able to compete in person, which is great for them. And right now, our mock trial team just competed in regionals, and they are going to state again. So they'll be competing in state on March 5th and 6th, so that's exciting. And forensics actually just placed second in our conference, so they're doing really well. And there's lots of photos for you guys to look at of our forensics team and our mock trial team. One mention of in the classroom, and this is during Mrs. Barlow's popular culture class. So Alex Rashid, who is a senior, I don't know if you know Carrie Rashid, who works at the primary school. So they were looking through old yearbooks, and he found his mom's senior picture. One of the things that he said is, he had a lot of, I think Carrie went to high school about the same time I went to high school, and mentioned something about her hair, and I said, that's called hairspray, and we used a lot of it back in the day, back in the 1980s. So he was able to find that picture. I thought it was kind of cool. We do have the ACT coming up. I did mention that, and that's on March 8th. Ashley's going to be really excited. She does not have to come to school on that day because she's a senior. So seniors and freshmen will not be there. We will give a practice ACT to our sophomores and the real ACT to our juniors on that day. So we're looking forward to that. I do want to mention that we are going to try to get our exchange programs up and going again, and we will have an informational meeting for students that are interested in traveling to Thailand next fall. And if everything works out, hopefully we will be able to do that, and then hopefully host the next spring students from Thailand. And also we're going to have an informational meeting about our German exchange program, because we'd like to host German students next fall. So we're working towards that, and hopefully things will work out. The other thing I do want to mention is we did not have a winter dance. I think I talked about that at our last meeting, and we did have a ski trip, and I really appreciate all the chaperones that went along. Mr. Kittleson and Mr. McKellar, they kind of organized that. We had over 50 students that attended that. And then finally, I shared a video with high school families in the Lodi Blue Devil Bulletin last January, or in the last month. And it was a video that was actually produced by a woman named Rye Partible. And it basically talks about the unique challenges that students have today. It was back in 2020, but similar challenges as they have today. This is what it feels like to be a teenager in 2020. If you haven't had an opportunity to look at that video, I would highly recommend you look at it. It talks about the unique challenges, but it also talks a little bit about the tremendous opportunities our teenagers have as well. And then when considering COVID and even some of the things that Ashley has talked about and the challenges that they've gone through, it's been very, very difficult. But again, a lot of tremendous opportunities that they have because they're high schoolers at this time. And that's it. And then lots of other pictures from athletics that you guys can take a look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Moose. I don't think it was hairspray, it was moose.
Oh, it was hairspray.
It was both.
Herms.
It kept wallpaper on.
Herms.
And mullets. Vince, would you like to say something?
Wow. So I have a couple things, District Administrator report. First of all, just ask people to come out and learn about the referendum. As I shared tonight, there's a Facebook Live this coming Thursday. The next couple weeks, we'll have information sessions in the LGI here at the high school, and then some at the primary school. There's coffee with the superintendent on the first and third Saturdays in February and March from 9 to 10 a.m. Just to ask questions. And please check out the website. There's a frequently asked questions document. And a big shout out to all the municipalities who've given me some time to speak at their meetings to help share our information about the upcoming referendum. I appreciate them giving up their time and their busy meeting agendas to hear about this topic as it impacts the residents of their municipality. Secondly, I will be meeting with staff and talking about referendum, who will be impacted by the referendum if a referendum does not pass within the next month, having conversations about that, because that especially for teaching staff, there are statutory deadlines that we have to meet when we make those type of reductions. So those conversations will have to happen here shortly. Thirdly, just been meeting a couple times recently with Sauk Prairie and Wisconsin Heights, and talking about the possibility of trying to explore a grow your own program in educators. We all know that we are looking for, that there's a shortage of teachers and educators, and that is going to continue. So trying to work in building a consortium where we maybe help support kids who want to go on in education, and then help offset some of maybe that tuition if they come back and teach in our buildings. The problem with doing that with Lodi is if somebody leaves, there might be, you know, for example, if somebody would leave and want to teach agriculture and come back and Connor Anderson's still here, well, now that's not an opportunity. But if we have a consortium of schools that we use that and they go into one of the consortium schools in the area, that might be an opportunity. So just something we're starting to explore. I appreciate Jordan Sins, the superintendent at Wisconsin Heights, kind of coming up with this idea and spearheading it, and he's reached out to the possibility of even teaching a class amongst the different districts and having it in a high school class that students would get college education credits for as well. So just something we're looking at. We had a brief meeting again this morning, and we're going to start, you know, put more information and reaching out to other districts as well. Two more items. I would just like to, big shout out to our bus drivers. It's Bus Driver Appreciation Week, so thanks to CoBusin and all the hard work that they do each and every day. We'll be working on getting some treats down to the bus barn and thanking them. And then finally, I asked people to go out and vote tomorrow. Tomorrow is a board primary election, and so please go out and vote. Everybody's votes matter, so I encourage you to get out there and vote if you haven't done it already.
Thank you. If we could grow our own, it would be an amazing thing to have students go to school in our district, go to college, and then come back to our area,
right,
and live their lives with a well-paying job. It would be amazing. It would be amazing.
Yeah, that's the idea, and we're looking at probably schools to the north of us. I mean, we're probably not going to be working at Wanakee and
No.
Middleton and those, right? But we're going to be looking at other schools north of us, and the idea is that who's best to come back to these areas are kids who grew up here and enjoyed living in a Lodi or living in a Sauk Prairie or a Wisconsin Heights or if it's Columbus. You know, those areas are so similar,
Right.
even though a lot of times we compete against each other in all different kinds of sports and activities, but we're very similar in trying to find a way that we can just draw more people into the field and help make sure that we're supporting. It would help us out and help kids out, because one of the biggest barriers obviously is going into school 4 years, 4.5 years, 5 years, and then coming into a job that the initial starting salary isn't tremendous, right? So it just becomes how can we help people get there?
Nice. So Terry and I had an amazing opportunity today to go to the LES OSC student leadership groups. So it was third grade kids who were getting together to lead, fourth grade kids who were getting together to lead, and fifth grade kids who are getting together to lead and giving up their recesses to do that kind of leadership. They're looking at trying to figure out ways to overlap their recess time so that they can play with each other in different configurations between OSC and LES. They want to look at updating the playground equipment, possibly getting lockers in LES. A fifth grade was talking about doing a Cesar Chavez Day or a Rosa Parks Day or both, and then having a scavenger hunt and book readings on those days. And again, it was just phenomenal to watch kids at third grade figuring out, this is how you lead, this is how you figure out how to do this kind of stuff, and then seeing it more developed in fourth grade, and then seeing it very developed in fifth grade, and seeing that progression through all those different grades. It was just phenomenal what those kids are doing and what they're learning. And that is my report. Thank you. We next have board reports. CISA 5.
CISA 5. I met with CISA 5, and we had a presentation with the CISA 5 audiologists. So just, you know, for everybody, the CISA 5 has a lot of about 250 some staff members, And many of them travel between a lot of the CSIS schools. So like if you needed an audiologist for like two students, then they would provide those teachers to come and come into your school. So there's just so many CSIS staff that are, it helps districts out so you don't have to hire that yourself. So each meeting, we usually have a presentation by some of them and hear about what they do. CSIS-5 is also expanding just a lot of their trainings, as things change. Schools need staff to be trained in different things, and they'll take suggestions too. Like, for instance, a lot of people, it's things like Skyward and Infinite Campus and, all kinds of things like that they will provide. They're doing quite a few superintendent searches. They are also coming up with some plans to help mentor new administrators, because there's sometimes not enough people to mentor the new people with turnover. And that was pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Co-curricular.
The wrestling team wrapped up the regular season by winning the Capital Conference North title. 7 Lodi wrestlers took home individual conference championships. The Lodi wrestling team also took home first place in their home tournament for the first time since 2018. Lodi hosted regionals this past Saturday, and Lodi took home the regional championship with 7 wrestlers claiming individual regional championships. The team will compete at sectionals on Tuesday in Richland Center. That's wrong. It's River Valley.
Team sectionals tomorrow, River Valley. Individual sectionals in Richland Center on Saturday.
Thank you. I knew when I read it, it wasn't right. Oh, just on a side note, there was a young heavyweight wrestler on Saturday that got the whole ring gym rocking with an overtime win.
Double overtime.
And was interviewed afterwards.
Yeah.
But I can't remember his name, so I'm sorry. The boys' basketball team is 13-7 with a conference record of 5-2. Recent highlights include a thrilling 57-54 comeback win against Columbus on Friday, February 4th, and a 76-71 double overtime win last week at home versus Lakeside Lutheran. The boys have 2 remaining regular season home games, taking on Lake Mills on Tuesday, Friday, February 15th, and Portage on Monday, February 21st. The girls' basketball team has an overall record of 5 wins and 17 losses, and a conference record of 1 win and 8 losses. The girls' basketball team closed out their regular season home schedule with a 47-42 win over Luther Prep at home on Friday, February 11th. The girls' team will finish out their regular season at Cambridge on February 15th, and at Poinette on February 17th. The Norski Co-op hockey team is 6 wins and 12 losses and 1 tie. They finished out the regular season this past Friday, February 15th. Recent highlights include Lodi senior Preston Nichols scoring 4 goals in team wins 7-5 over Stoughton on Thursday. February 3rd, they will take on, no, I said that wrong. The game against Stoughton was February 3rd. They'll take on Sauk Prairie Co-op in the first round of regionals on Tuesday, February 15th at Sauk Prairie. And the Stoughton Iceberg hockey team finished the season with an overall record of 4 wins and 10 losses, and a conference record of 2 wins and 3 losses. They will take on Beloit Memorial at home on Friday, February 18th in the first round of regionals. Our girls are in a hockey co-op with many other schools based in Stoughton. Lodi hosted a mock trial regional competition this past weekend. The Lodi mock trial team took home the regional championship, winning all 4 of their trials this weekend. They will compete in the state mock trial tournament on March 5th and 6th. On Saturday, February 5th, Lodi placed third in the small teams at the Sun Prairie Tournament in forensics. On Monday, February 7th, Lodi hosted the Capital Conference Forensics Tournament. Lodi was the conference runner-up in the small teams behind Luther Prep. This coming Saturday, Lodi will host the Lodi Forensics Tournament at the high school. And now on to the play. Lodi High School students are busy preparing for the production of Clue coming up this spring. The play production will run on Friday, March 4th at 7 p.m., Saturday, March 5th at 7 p.m., and Sunday, March 6th at 2 p.m. Hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you. OSC.
So OSC, we're continuing as a board to kind of work on some strategic planning of our own. We have a person coming in from WRCCS who's going to help us learn to work more efficiently as a board and help us develop an evaluation tool. The advisors are continuing to work on some curriculum mapping, and then continued discussion, starting to plan for project night, and then the enrollment period.
When is project night? Is that May or is that March or?
Give me 1 second. March.
Sorry.
That's okay.
March 17th,
March
thank you.
17th.
I want to make sure I have that day off.
The musical's typically in May.
I want to make sure I'm there. Thank you. Contract review.
Okay. We did cover everything tonight that we talked about at our last meeting, the Washington DC trip, COVID-19 leave, staff reduction, parameters. One thing I wanted to say unassociated with that is I did get a chance to visit the primary school for half a day. Amy had set that up for me, and I got a chance to go into a bunch of classrooms, and it was so great. It was, as a board, we talk obviously a lot about education. We don't get as much chance to actually just be like sitting there next to the kids, and it was so amazing. And the staff, I know this, but it's so nice to see. They're so professional, but also so flexible and warm. They're just the whole picture. And so thank you, Amy, for helping me set that up.
Curriculum, I don't think we met.
We didn't meet.
Okay, and then facility finance.
Facility finance met. I didn't take really good notes here. So we met on February the 3rd, I believe. And we did talk about a elementary school mural that is going to be done, I guess, and they're gonna bring us back a proposal, but it's going to be something historic about Lodi. And then we did discuss the Chromebook lease that was on tonight's agenda, as well as the food staff compensation. And the district's financial audit was tabled for the time being, so we will revisit that at our next meeting. And then we also went through and discussed the upcoming referendum.
Policy committee?
We will meet on Wednesday of this week.
Okay. And that is under future meeting and agendas. We do not need to return to closed session. Someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Terry and a second by Bill. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are now adjourned.